you'll make it to 7 rounds today.
The prize piece comes to join
My collection.
that stick.
Pain will be returned tenfold. Space aligns. Behold my collection.
I know what I want. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Stand still. Stand still.
Resistance will be punished. Time controls. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. It will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Goodness sake. Stand still. Cascade of pain.
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry.
the living.
All right. This is my 36th take of my League Starter for 3.27 Boneshatter Slayer. So this is a build update at around the 32-hour mark. And overall, I feel like this build performed exactly how I wanted to do. Campaigning felt pretty good. I was able to fly through all the acts with pretty high damage and pretty good tankiness. Mapping is when some problems started to show up. White maps I felt like were really good, but then yellow and red, my defenses were pretty poor. However, I was able to find some ways to get some more layering, and that usually fixes the problems. So to begin with, I was able to get this build to level 94, and I can see myself pushing this to level 95 even. So for defensive layering, I was able to get 82% all res, 100% spell suppress cap, 31k armor, as well as 100% elemental avoidance. And not to mention, this build also runs 5 endurance charges and does have overleech with 10% reduced damage taken while leeching. So this build feels pretty good during mapping. All right, let's move over to the gear. So for the gear, pretty straightforward. A lot of them are just fractured bases, and I slammed essences on it. I like to do that because it feels like I'm crafting when I'm just really slamming essences over and over again, but close enough. So the first thing I decided to get was my weapon with a high attack speed fracture base because more attacks means more trauma, which means more damage. I just slammed Essences of Contempt until I got tier 1 physical, which was very lucky, and then I just crafted on increased damage per endurance charge. My armor is mainly just chance to suppress spell damage, and then slam essences as needed. So if I need chaos, if I need life, that's what I slam on. My rings also are pretty straightforward. Life, slam essences, and a vermilion ring because increased maximum life. It's really nice. I was able to snipe a pretty good all elemental resistance fracture. And for the amulet, Hinokora Sight. Very useful because it gives me accuracy rating, armor, and all res. And then Hatchet Master Anoint, of course, because Onslaught feels amazing during maps. So graphs, which are the new thing for this league, I had to figure out what I wanted, and I settled on these two, Return to Dust and Violent Desire. If you used Return to Dust, you would know why. It feels amazing. It creates 4 hands that slam down, doing very large amounts of damage. The reason I like this one so much, though, is because although these graphs don't scale based off of your damage increases, it does scale based off of pride and vulnerability, which means the enemy is taking more physical damage, which does help Return to Dust do even more damage, so that's why it's so nice. Also, not to mention, stuns enemies, super underrated. It helps out a lot when I'm bossing, because that stun just benefits a lot. And then we have Violent Desire. The reason I took this one is because it enables Impale on this build. I ran this with Impale support, and I also decided to take some Impale nodes down here to cap my Impale chance. So this one is very nice if you want to slot some Impale into the build. Moving on to the tree, the only difference about the tree from the build guide is the cluster jewel, and that I decided to get suppressed spell chance. So to get my suppress capped, of course you need to have some suppress on your gear, but also the Green Nightmare helps out a lot, as this gives me around, I think, 26% with these nodes here, as well as cold resistance tattoos. Only thing you need to make sure is that if you're buying this, the Foulborn mod isn't overriding the cold res, also grants spell suppress chance. And other than that, it's all good. And then of course these nodes here to give me some nice spell suppress. Oh, and additionally, I felt the need to take a node like this to increase that leech rate. It definitely helps a lot with the trauma stacks, but also with just leeching through damage. It feels a lot nicer when you run this. I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but it feels very nice. I also grabbed an Ancestral Vision because if I'm at suppress spell cap, I might as well grab this node to then cap my elemental ailment avoidance. Along with the boots, I'm able to get 100%. And these nodes down here give a little bit more. Moving on to the Cluster Jewel, I bought this for 2 divines, not too bad. The only important part is make sure that Feed the Fury and Martial Prowess are here. and that the node that you don't want is over here. The overall skill tree is about the same. The only changes are these 2 jewels, which are about 4 divines when I paid for them. Testing out also the Oshabi Ascendancy. I personally didn't like the Wild Bear too much. It didn't feel too good because I would have to drop Headsman for that. It didn't feel worth it. The only other node I can see myself taking over Headsman would be the Delirium node, because that gives me a nice 40% less damage taken from hits, which is huge. Downside is I have to drop a pretty good DPS node, but overall, I mean, 40% less damage from hits is up to personal preference if you want to feel a lot more tankier. But overall, I felt like Boneshatter Slayer performed pretty well. It did everything I wanted it to do, and I'm definitely happy with the outcome of it. So, appreciate you for taking the time watching this, and I would love to hear any feedback about the build itself or the build guide I made, and any questions. I can try my best to answer this. I'm not an expert at Path of Exile. I don't think I ever will be, but I appreciate your time. Hope your league's going well.